She swore no human could ever defeat her, until she met that look. The Mojave Desert stretched endlessly, a sea of cracked earth and shimmering heat, the horizon blurred into a mirage of sky and sand. It was the kind of place where secrets could vanish, swallowed by silence, where the air itself seemed heavy with things that did not belong to this world. On that day, beneath the burning sun, a man stood alone. His name was Daniel Cross, a former soldier turned wanderer, carrying scars both visible and invisible. He had come to the desert not for glory, not for duty, but because it was the only place he could breathe without remembering the weight of everything he had lost. And then she appeared. The sky cracked with light that was not lightning. A streak of blue fire tore across the heavens, shrieking as it descended. Daniel shielded his eyes, the ground trembling beneath his boots. The object struck the earth miles ahead, a storm of dust rising like the fist of an angry god. Curiosity overpowered fear. He walked toward the crater, each step crunching against broken stone, sweat trickling down his back. The silence after the impact was unnerving. Not the silence of the desert, but the silence of expectation, as if the world itself held its breath. When Daniel reached the rim, he froze. At the center of the crater, standing tall amid twisted metal and burning fragments, was a figure unlike anything he had ever seen. Her skin shimmered with the hue of a midnight ocean, blue and radiant beneath the cruel desert sun. Her hair, long and flowing, blazed like captured sunlight, golden strands catching the wind, almost glowing. She was not human, and yet she was unmistakably alive. The woman, no, the warrior, pulled herself from the wreckage, her movements precise, disciplined, as if even gravity bowed reluctantly to her will. Her eyes, an otherworldly shade of silver, scanned the horizon. When they landed on Daniel, it was not with confusion or fear. It was with challenge. Daniel's heart pounded. He knew instinctively what he was looking at. A soldier, like himself, though from somewhere far beyond the stars. The scars etched into her armor, the way her stance radiated defiance. She was a survivor. Her voice cut through the desert air, sharp, melodic, and laced with contempt. No human can defeat me. The words were heavy, not shouted but declared, like a fact etched into stone. She wasn't bragging. She was certain. Daniel didn't flinch. He didn't reach for a weapon. He only smiled, a faint, weary smile born not of arrogance, but of something deeper, the knowledge that he had already faced worse than death. And he answered with a single word. Begin. The desert seemed to tremble between them. For a moment, nothing moved. Heat shimmered around them like a veil. He could hear his own breath, feel the rhythm of his pulse in his throat. Her eyes narrowed, measuring him not as prey, but as something unexpected, something that didn't fit into her world of certainty. She took a step forward, the sand shifting under her boots, her golden hair whipping in the hot wind. Daniel didn't move. He wanted her to see it, the steadiness in his gaze, the refusal to yield. Whatever war she had fought before, whatever victory she carried on her shoulders, here she would not find fear. And for the first time, the warrior hesitated. Far above them, the sun blazed down, merciless and indifferent. The wreckage of her vessel still burned, smoke curling into the sky like a beacon. Daniel knew others would come, military patrols, scientists, maybe even those who had chased her across the stars. But in that fragile moment, it was just the two of them, human and alien, bound by something neither fully understood. He thought of the deserts he had crossed before, of battlefields that looked much the same, silent, scorched, littered with broken things. He thought of how he had sworn never to fight again, never to carry the weight of blood on his hands. And yet here he was, standing against someone who had just declared herself unbeatable. Her lips curved, not quite a smile, but a flicker of recognition. Perhaps she saw in him what he saw in her. Not an enemy, but a reflection. Two warriors exiled by fate, colliding in a place where neither truly belonged. The wind howled, kicking up dust around them, painting their silhouettes against the dying light of the day. This was not the end of a battle. It was the beginning of a story. The silence of the desert did not last. A distant rumble echoed across the sands, low and steady, like thunder rolling underground. Daniel's head tilted, eyes narrowing toward the horizon. He had been in enough war zones to recognize the sound of approaching engines. Whoever was coming, they were organized and fast. The alien warrior heard it too. Her silver eyes flicked in the same direction, her jaw tightening. The faint glow of her blue skin deepened as her body tensed, every line of her form sharpened by instinct. For her, danger was not new. But this danger was different. She was stranded, alone, her ship burning in pieces around her. Daniel took a step closer, his boots crunching over fragments of alien alloy. "You need to move," he said firmly. She turned her gaze on him, with something between suspicion and curiosity. "You speak as if you command me." Her accent twisted the words strangely, but the meaning was clear enough. "I'm not commanding you," Daniel replied, calm but steady. "I'm telling you, if you stay here, you'll be captured. And you don't look like someone who enjoys cages." Her expression didn't soften, but her silence told him she was listening. The rumble grew louder, dust plumes rising in the distance. Military vehicles, no doubt drawn by the crash. Daniel knew how this worked. First containment, then interrogation. They would swarm her, drag her into a black site, dissect her mind and maybe her body. He had seen enough classified programs to imagine what would happen. He couldn't let that happen. Why? He wasn't sure. Maybe it was the soldier in him, unwilling to watch another warrior fall into the hands of men who didn't understand. Or maybe it was the way she had looked at him, not as prey, not as an insect, but as someone who might actually matter. Her voice broke his thoughts. "You would help me?" Daniel met her eyes. "Yeah." For the first time, her composure faltered. She blinked slowly, as if trying to decode him, to measure the truth inside his words. In her world, help came at a price. In her wars, kindness was weakness. And yet, here was this human, offering both without hesitation. The engines roared closer. Sand whipped against their faces. Daniel reached out his hand. "Come on. We don't have time." The alien warrior looked at it, her golden hair whipping in the wind, her silver eyes reflecting fire and uncertainty. She did not take his hand, not yet, but she moved toward him. It was enough. They ran. The desert stretched endlessly ahead, unforgiving under the blazing sun. Every breath was sharp, every step sinking into the sand. Daniel pushed forward, leading her through canyons and dry riverbeds he knew from long, lonely wanderings. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder, headlights cutting through the haze. At one point she stumbled and used the terrain. Daniel caught her by the arm, steadying her. Her skin was cool against his, almost electric. She jerked away, glaring at him, but she didn't push him aside. "You're not used to running on Earth," he said between breaths. "Your world is weak," she hissed, but the edge of her words carried something less than contempt, almost defiance against herself. Daniel smirked despite the danger. "Weak enough to keep you on your feet." Her eyes narrowed. For the briefest moment, she almost smiled. They pressed on until the sun dipped lower, the desert turning red with twilight. Daniel guided her into the jagged shelter of a sandstone outcrop, where shadows swallowed them whole. From their hiding place, they watched the convoy sweep past, armored trucks bristling with antennas, dust billowing in their wake. The warrior exhaled sharply, tension in her shoulders easing. But she didn't look relieved. She looked unsettled. Daniel leaned back against the stone, his chest heaving. That was close. She studied him in silence, her gaze heavy, as though weighing him against something only she could see. Then she asked, "Why risk your life for me? You owe me nothing. You don't even know my name." Daniel wiped the sweat from his brow, meeting her stare without hesitation. "Names don't matter. I've seen what happens when people like you fall into the wrong hands. And I've seen what happens when no one steps up. I'm not letting it happen again." Her lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. The desert wind whistled through the rocks, carrying the taste of dust and heat. Finally, she spoke, her voice low, almost reluctant. "My name is Aaron." Daniel nodded. "Daniel." Aaron tilted her head, as if rolling the word in her mind. Then, softer than before, she said, "You are strange, Daniel of Earth. I told you no human could defeat me. Yet, you are not like the others." Daniel's eyes lingered on her, on the fierce lines of her face and the flicker of something vulnerable beneath her strength. "Maybe you're right," he said, "but maybe this isn't about winning or losing." For a long time, they sat in silence, the desert stretching endlessly around them. The threat hadn't passed. It had only begun. But in that moment, with twilight painting her skin in shades of fire and shadow, Daniel realized something had already shifted. He hadn't just saved her. He had crossed a line he could never step back from. Night fell heavy over the desert. The heat bled away, replaced by a chill that sank into bone. Daniel and Aaron crouched among the rocks, their breaths steadying in the silence after the chase. For a moment, the stars burned brighter than he had ever seen them, a sky sharp with diamonds, endless and cruel. But Aaron wasn't looking at the stars. Her silver eyes scanned the horizon, restless, untrusting. Her people were warriors, forged in the fire of endless campaigns, and she knew what pursuit meant. If the Earth military had seen the wreckage of her ship, they wouldn't stop until they had her in chains. Daniel felt it too, the gnawing certainty that this was only the beginning. He broke the silence. "They'll be back. Bigger force. Drones. Maybe aircraft." Aaron's jaw tightened. "Then we face them." Daniel shook his head. "You don't get it. This isn't your kind of war. They don't fight fair. They don't challenge you head on. They surround, overwhelm, and break you down piece by piece until there's nothing left." Her gaze snapped to him, fire in her voice. "Do you think I fear them? I have burned armies to ash. I have shattered fleets that span the void." She leaned forward, her blue skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. "I do not lose." Daniel didn't flinch. "Everyone loses, Aaron. The question is how much you're willing to give up before you admit it." Her eyes narrowed, not with hatred, but with something sharper, something wounded. For her, defeat was more than loss. It was dishonor, the unraveling of everything she had been built to be. Before she could answer, the desert shivered with sound. A mechanical hum, faint but growing. Daniel stiffened. He knew that sound, drones. "They found us," he muttered. Aaron rose to her feet in a fluid motion, scanning the sky. Tiny red lights flickered above the dunes, sweeping in search patterns. They weren't close enough to strike yet, but they would be soon. Daniel's instinct screamed. He reached for her arm. "We can't fight them here. We'll be pinned." She yanked free, glaring. "You run. I fight. You'll die." Daniel snapped, his voice sharp as the desert wind. "That's not strength, that's suicide." Her silver eyes locked on his, cold and unyielding. Better death in battle than to be caged. For a heartbeat, Daniel saw her not as the indestructible warrior she claimed to be, but as someone who had lived her whole life with no choice but to fight. Someone who had never been given the chance to imagine another way. His voice softened. "You don't have to fight alone." The words hung between them, raw and disarming. For a moment, her defiance wavered. She looked at him, really looked at him, and in his eyes she saw something alien to her. Not conquest, not fear, but stubborn loyalty. The drone lights drew closer. Daniel grabbed her hand this time, not asking, just pulling. "Trust me." For a heartbeat she resisted. Then, astonishingly, she let him. They slipped into the narrow cut of a dry riverbed, moving fast under the cover of darkness. The drones swept overhead, beams slicing across the sand, missing them by inches. Every sound was amplified. The crunch of rocks underfoot, the thrum of machines above, the rapid rhythm of two hearts beating in sync. As they ran, Daniel caught fragments of her, the glow of her skin, the flash of gold hair in the moonlight, the hard set of her jaw. She was fire wrapped in steel, yet there was something fragile hidden deep inside, a secret she guarded as fiercely as her blade. A sudden whine split the air. A drone peeled lower, locking on. "Down!" Daniel shouted, throwing himself against her. They hit the sand as a burst of energy seared past, the blast scorching the rocks where they had stood. Aaron rolled instantly to her feet, hand snapping to her waist where a blade of shimmering light unfolded from nothing. The weapon hummed, vibrating with lethal purpose. She slashed upward, and the drone shattered into a spray of sparks that lit the canyon walls like falling stars. Daniel stared, breathless. She wasn't boasting. She really was lethal beyond comprehension. But the victory was short-lived. More lights appeared on the horizon. Not just drones, vehicles, armored transports, maybe even helicopters. Aaron's silver eyes hardened, ready to meet them head on. But Daniel saw the truth. There were too many. This wasn't a skirmish anymore. It was a hunt, and they were the prey. "We can't stay," Daniel said, urgency pounding in his voice. "If they corner us here, we're finished." Aaron gripped her blade, fire in her veins. But then she glanced at him, and something changed. For the first time, she considered his words not as weakness, but as strategy. Her jaw clenched. Finally, she nodded. They turned deeper into the canyon, fleeing into shadows thick as ink. Behind them, the desert roared with engines and machines, the chase tightening like a noose. As they ran side by side, Daniel realized something had shifted between them. She no longer looked at him as just a human, fragile and beneath her. She looked at him as something else, an equal, or maybe even an ally. But trust forged in desperation was fragile, and both of them knew the night was only beginning. The canyon walls pressed tighter as Daniel and Aaron pushed deeper into the darkness. The night wind funneled through the rock, carrying the distant growl of engines. Their pursuers were relentless, fanning out across the desert, drones buzzing above like mechanical vultures. Daniel's boots slipped on loose gravel, his lungs burning with every breath. He glanced at Aaron. Even after everything, she moved with precision, every step purposeful, her golden hair catching streaks of moonlight. But he could see it, the subtle strain in her jaw, the faint tremor in her breath. Even she had limits. They couldn't keep running forever. The canyon split into two paths. Daniel slowed, scanning the jagged walls. His instinct screamed. One path was too open, a trap. The other descended into shadow, steep and narrow, but it might buy them time. "This way," he said, guiding her down the darker passage. Aaron hesitated, her silver eyes narrowing. "You lead as if this is your battlefield." Daniel gave a half-smile despite the danger. "I've survived worse than deserts. Trust me." Before she could answer, a deafening crack split the night. A blast tore into the canyon mouth behind them, showering rock and sand. The ground shook violently, knocking Daniel to his knees. Aaron spun, blade in hand, her body a blur of reflex. A squad of soldiers poured into the canyon, armored and armed, their rifles glowing with charged rounds. "Contact!" one of them shouted, beams cutting through the dark. Daniel cursed, grabbing Aaron's arm. "Move!" They sprinted, bolts of energy sizzling past. One struck the wall inches from Daniel's head, rock shards slicing his cheek. Aaron turned mid-run, her blade slicing arcs of light, deflecting shots with inhuman speed. But there were too many. And then it happened. Aaron stumbled, not from clumsiness, but from pain. A shot grazed her side, burning through armor into her blue skin. She hissed, her stride faltering. Daniel's heart lurched. Without thinking, he looped her arm over his shoulders, dragging her forward. She resisted, furious, but her strength wavered. "Don't," she growled through clenched teeth. "Shut up and run." Daniel snapped, forcing her forward. Together, they plunged deeper into the canyon until the path ended abruptly at a sheer drop. A black abyss yawned below, the desert floor invisible in the moonless dark. Behind them, soldiers closed in, weapons raised. Daniel looked down, then at Aaron. Her silver eyes burned with defiance despite the blood staining her side. "They'll kill us if we stay," he said. She raised her chin. "Then we fight." Daniel shook his head, adrenaline pounding. "No, we jump." For a heartbeat, she stared at him as if he were insane. Then something shifted in her gaze, a flash of respect, or maybe disbelief that he would choose the same madness she would. Without another word, Daniel tightened his grip on her hand, and together they leapt. The wind roared past them, sand and stone vanishing into blur. For a moment, they were weightless, suspended in darkness, two worlds colliding in freefall. Daniel braced for impact, his body screaming with fear, and then they struck. Water. They plunged into an underground river, icy and violent, the current pulling them instantly downstream. Daniel surfaced with a gasp, dragging Aaron with him. Her golden hair spread like fire across the black water, her skin glowing faintly under the current. "Swim!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the cavern. They let the river carry them, crashing through rapids, slamming against stone. At last, the current spat them into a wider chamber, calmer waters swirling around. Daniel coughed, pulling himself onto a ledge of slick rock. Aaron followed, collapsing beside him. For a long moment, neither spoke, just the sound of water dripping endlessly in the dark. Daniel's chest heaved, every muscle burning. He turned to her, his voice low. "You okay?" Aaron pressed her hand to the burn on her side. Her jaw clenched, but her eyes met his. "I live." He let out a shaky laugh, shaking his head. "Good enough." The silence stretched, thick with exhaustion and something unspoken. She had almost died. He had almost lost her, and the thought hit harder than the fall. Aaron studied him, her silver gaze softer now, stripped of contempt. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why risk yourself for me again and again?" Daniel hesitated, then answered honestly, "Because I couldn't do nothing. Not again." Her eyes lingered on his, searching for lies, but there were none. For the first time, her lips curved faintly, not a smile, but the ghost of one. Above them, faint echoes of soldiers still drifted through the canyon. The hunt wasn't over, but in that hidden chamber, under the earth, something had shifted forever. They were no longer just running. They were bound by survival, and by something far more dangerous. If you've ever rooted for an impossible love, if you've ever believed that two souls from different worlds could defy the odds, stick around. This story is only beginning, and what comes next will test them in ways neither could imagine. The underground chamber smelled of damp stone and river mist. The only light came from faint streaks of moonlight slipping through cracks above, turning the cavern into a world of shadows. Daniel leaned back against a slick rock, chest heaving. Every muscle ached from the fall, but his focus was on Aaron. She sat beside him, her blue skin glowing faintly in the dark, her golden hair plastered against her shoulders. One hand pressed tightly against her side where the burn had scorched through armor and flesh. "You're bleeding," Daniel said quietly. Aaron's silver eyes flicked to him, sharp despite her exhaustion. "It is nothing." He shook his head. "It's not nothing. Let me see." She turned away, jaw set, as if the very idea of accepting help offended her. "I do not need." Daniel cut her off, his voice firm. "Stop. I've patched worse wounds in worse places. Let me." For a long moment, she resisted, her pride warring with necessity. Finally, with a quiet exhale, she moved her hand. The burn was ugly, charred edges of skin glowing faintly with some unnatural residue from the weapon that had hit her. Daniel swallowed hard. He tore a strip of cloth from his shirt, dipping in the cold river before pressing it gently to her side. Aaron hissed, her whole body tensing. "Do you humans always inflict more pain when you claim to heal?" Daniel smirked faintly, though his eyes stayed focused. "Pretty much." The cloth came away stained with her blood, darker than his, almost violet under the pale light. He worked carefully, binding the wound as best he could. His fingers brushed her skin, cool and smooth like polished stone. She didn't pull away this time. Instead, she studied him, every detail of him, the lines etched by war on his face, the calm precision of his hands, the quiet determination in his eyes. He was not like the soldier she had fought before. He wasn't trying to prove dominance or strength. He was trying to keep her alive. "You risk too much," she murmured, her voice softer than before. Daniel tied the cloth tight, meeting her gaze. "I've already lost too much. Not again." The words lingered in the cavern, heavy with ghosts he didn't explain. Aaron tilted her head, curiosity flickering across her face. But she didn't press. She simply held his gaze, as if trying to understand the shape of his silence. At last she said, "You speak as if you know war." Daniel let out a humorless laugh. "I do." He looked away, his jaw tightening. "And I know what it takes from you. Piece by piece, until there's nothing left but the fight." For the first time, her expression softened. She understood, more than he realized. She, too, carried the weight of endless battles, victories that tasted like ashes, honor built on scars. Silence stretched between them, not awkward, but heavy with recognition. The sound of engines above shattered it. Muffled, distant, but enough to remind them the hunt hadn't ended. Daniel tensed, scanning the cracks in the ceiling where faint light bled through. "They'll sweep the canyon until they find us," he said. Erin's hand tightened on her blade. "Then we strike first." Daniel shook his head. "You're wounded, and we don't know how many are out there." She bristled, fire flashing in her silver eyes. "You think I am weak?" "No," Daniel said firmly, his voice steady, unshaken. "I think you're not invincible, and that means we need to be smart." Her glare lingered, but faltered. Deep down, she knew he was right. Pride had carried her across galaxies, but pride alone wouldn't save her here. Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. "We wait. Let them think we're gone. Then we move." For once, she didn't argue. She only nodded, reluctantly. They sat in silence again, the river whispering beside them. Daniel leaned back, exhaustion pulling at him, but his eyes stayed on Erin. On the way her shoulders sagged just slightly now that the fight had paused. On the way her gaze sometimes slipped to him when she thought he wasn't looking. Something was changing between them. Slowly, dangerously, undeniably. Daniel didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But in that cavern, with death still prowling above, he knew one truth with startling clarity. He would protect her, not because she was alien, not because she was invincible, but because, for the first time in years, he felt alive standing beside someone. And he wasn't ready to lose that. The underground river had quieted, its current slipping past like a secret unwilling to be shared. The cavern was cold, damp, and dark, but in the silence, a strange calm settled between Daniel and Erin. Daniel sat cross-legged near the water's edge, his back against stone. Across from him, Erin adjusted the makeshift bandage at her side. Her silver eyes flicked toward him from time to time, studying him in a way that felt less like judgment and more like curiosity. Finally, she spoke. "You are unlike the humans I was taught to expect." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "And what were you taught to expect?" Her voice was measured, almost clinical, fragile, selfish. Creatures of fear who break under pressure. A species too young to matter. Daniel chuckled dryly. "Sounds about right. At least, on paper." Erin tilted her head. "Yet you do not break, even when faced with death." He shrugged. "I've already met death. Once you've looked it in the eye, it doesn't scare you as much anymore." Her gaze sharpened. "You lost someone." The words landed like a blade. Daniel's chest tightened, memories clawing their way back. The desert in Afghanistan, the screams, the explosion that took his squad. He looked away, jaw clenching. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Too many." Erin studied him in silence, the faint glow of her skin painting her features with melancholy. She recognized that look, the eyes of someone who carried the dead with him. It was a look she had seen in her own reflection countless times. Without thinking, she whispered, "I understand." Daniel looked back at her, surprised. Her silver eyes didn't waver. "I too carry ghosts. Entire worlds lost to war. Victories that taste only of ashes. Honor that leaves nothing but emptiness." She touched her chest lightly, as if the weight of those memories still lived there. For the first time since they met, Daniel saw not just the warrior, but the woman beneath, tired, scarred, searching for something more than survival. The silence that followed was not heavy this time. It was fragile, intimate. Daniel broke it with a small smile. "Guess we're both terrible at letting go." Erin's lips curved faintly, almost imperceptible. "Perhaps." They sat for a while, the river whispering beside them. Then Daniel leaned forward. "We need a plan. They won't stop until they find you. And if they find you, they'll take you apart piece by piece. I can't let that happen." Erin straightened, fire flickering in her silver eyes again. "Nor will I allow myself to be caged. But where can we go? Their machines watch the skies. Their soldiers hunt the ground. I am cut off from my people." Daniel thought for a long moment. There are places in this desert even the military doesn't touch. Old mines, abandoned tunnels. Smugglers used them decades ago. If we can reach one, we buy time. Her gaze softened, considering. And then we figure out how to fix your ship, or find another way off this rock before they tighten the net. For the first time, her expression wavered. She looked down, her voice quieter. "There is no ship. The wreckage cannot be repaired." Daniel frowned. "Then what's the plan?" She hesitated, then met his eyes with a vulnerability he hadn't seen before. "There is none." Until now, I believed I would die here. Alone. Daniel felt something twist in his chest. She had been ready to end as nothing more than wreckage in a desert. But now, not alone, he said firmly. Aaron blinked, silver eyes wide. You're not alone anymore, Daniel repeated, his voice steady, carrying a promise he hadn't planned to make but couldn't take back. For a moment, she only stared at him. Then her hand, still clutching her blade, slowly lowered. The tension in her shoulders eased. Something fragile passed between them. Trust. The sound of distant engines above reminded them the world hadn't forgotten. But here, beneath the earth, something shifted. Not victory, not defeat. A fragile alliance born of necessity, now hardening into something neither of them had expected. Erin leaned back against the stone, her body finally giving in to exhaustion. Her golden hair fell across her face, catching the faint light. Daniel watched as her breathing steadied, the warrior letting her guard slip, if only for a moment. He looked away, staring at the black water, fighting the pull inside him. He couldn't afford to care. Not like this. Not now. And yet, he already did. The underground chamber had given them one night of fragile safety. But dawn never promised mercy. Daniel stirred awake at the first tremor in the stone. A faint vibration shivered through the cavern walls, rattling loose dust into the air. His instinct screamed even before he heard it. The steady thump of rotor blades overhead. Helicopters. Erin was already on her feet, silver eyes narrowed, blade in hand. Her blue skin glowed faintly in the dim cavern, golden hair tangled from sleep, but her stance sharp, ready. She didn't ask if he had heard it. She knew. They found us, Daniel muttered. The sound grew louder, joined by the metallic growl of engines. Spotlights sliced down through cracks in the canyon ceiling. Shadows shifted. Boots hammered against stone. They had been cornered. Daniel grabbed Aaron's arm. We need to move now. But there was nowhere left to run. The chamber narrowed behind them into nothing but stone, and the only exit was the way they had entered. Soldiers were already pouring through it, armored and armed, rifles aimed. Aaron's blade hissed to life, glowing like molten light. Daniel's heart pounded as he scanned the chamber for cover. Too open, too exposed. Stay behind me, Aaron said, stepping forward. Daniel grabbed her wrist. You're wounded. If you fight all of them alone, you won't make it. Her silver eyes blazed with fury. Better to die free then fight with me. Daniel snapped, cutting her off. The words stopped her. For the briefest moment, her anger faltered. Then, with a sharp nod, she turned toward the advancing soldiers. The first volley of gunfire tore through the chamber, sparks exploding off the rocks. Aaron moved like liquid fire, blade deflecting bullets and arcs of light, her body twisting, striking, every motion precise. Daniel dove for cover, grabbing a fallen soldier's weapon as he rolled. Adrenaline surged through him. He hadn't wanted to fight again, hadn't wanted to feel the old fire, but it burned in his blood now. He rose from behind cover, rifle cracking in controlled bursts, dropping one soldier, then another. The cavern roared with chaos, gunfire, the scream of ricochets, the hum of Aaron's blade as it cut through armor like paper. She was magnificent, terrifying, but there were too many. Daniel saw the moment it happened. A soldier flanked her, rifle aimed at her unguarded side. No, Daniel shouted, breaking cover. He sprinted forward, slamming into the soldier before the shot fired. The rifle discharged wild, the blast grazing Daniel's arm with searing heat. Pain ripped through him, but he forced the soldier down, finishing the fight with brutal efficiency. Aaron turned, her eyes wide. For a heartbeat, he thought she might scold him. Instead, she whispered, raw and shaken, Daniel. There was no time for more. A grenade clattered across the stone, rolling toward them. Down! Daniel roared, grabbing Aaron and throwing them both behind a slab of broken rock. The explosion ripped the chamber apart, stone shattering, fire and dust swallowing everything. For a long second, there was only ringing silence. Daniel coughed, his ears buzzing. He pushed up on shaky arms, searching for her. Aaron lay beside him, alive, but dust-covered and bleeding from a new gash across her shoulder. Her blade flickered weakly in her hand. Their eyes met. They were alive, but barely, and the soldiers weren't finished. More shadows advanced through the smoke. Daniel rose unsteadily, rifle trembling in his grip. His arm burned from the earlier blast, his lungs raw from the explosion, but he planted himself in front of her. "You're not dying here," he growled. Erin pushed herself up, fury burning through exhaustion. She staggered to his side, blade humming. "Nor are you." Together, they stood, two warriors from different worlds, broken and bloodied, yet unyielding. The chamber echoed with the storm of battle once more. Daniel's rifle barked fire, every shot fueled by desperation. Erin's blade tore arcs of light, carving through the dark. But victory had a price. When the last soldier fell, silence crushed the chamber. Daniel dropped the empty rifle, chest heaving, body screaming with pain. Erin staggered, one hand clutching her wound, the other still gripping her blade though it trembled. They had survived. Barely. Daniel turned to her, blood dripping from his arm, dust painting his face. "You okay?" She swayed but straightened, silver eyes locked on his. "I live," she whispered, echoing her words from before. He almost laughed, but the sound caught in his throat. Something shifted in that silence. Not just trust, not just survival. A bond forged in fire, sealed in blood. They were no longer just human and alien, not just soldier and warrior. They were something else now. Something dangerous. Something unstoppable. The cavern reeked of gunpowder and scorched stone. Smoke hung low, twisting through beams of pale morning light seeping in from the cracks above. Bodies lay scattered in the rubble, silent reminders of the chaos that had nearly consumed them. Daniel pressed his back against the wall, his chest heaving, blood soaking through the torn fabric of his sleeve. Every breath stabbed like fire. He dragged a trembling hand across his forehead, leaving a streak of grime and sweat. Beside him, Erin knelt with her blade across her knees. The weapon's glow had dimmed to a faint pulse, like a heartbeat fading with exhaustion. Her golden hair was matted with dust, her blue skin marked with streaks of blood, some hers, some not. She sat still, too still, like a statue carved out of fatigue and pain. Daniel finally broke the silence. "We're alive." Her silver eyes lifted, catching the light, unreadable. "For now." He exhaled a sharp laugh, though it hurt. "You don't give a guy much comfort, you know that." Her lips twitched, not quite a smile but close. "Comfort is not survival." Daniel winced as he adjusted his arm, the wound burning hot. He saw her watching, saw the faint crease between her brows. Then, wordlessly, she reached into the remnants of her armor and pulled out a small vial. The liquid inside shimmered faintly, glowing like captured starlight. She extended it toward him. "Drink." He had it warily. "What is it?" "Medicine," she said. "It will slow the bleeding. Strengthen you. It was meant for my people, but—" She hesitated, the words sticking in her throat. "You've earned it." Daniel took the vial, their fingers brushing. A jolt ran through him. Not from medicine, but from her touch. He swallowed hard, then downed the liquid in one gulp. It burned cold, rushing through his veins like ice. Within seconds, the pain dulled, replaced by a strange clarity. "Damn," he muttered. "That's better than morphine." Her head tilted slightly. "Morphine, human medicine," he explained. "Doesn't work half as fast as that." Erin nodded once, then leaned back against the stone. Her blade rested across her lap, but her eyes softened. "You should rest. Your body will recover faster." He smirked. "What about you?" Her gaze dropped briefly to her shoulder, where blood still seeped through the crude bandage. "I have endured worse." Daniel shook his head, tearing a strip from his ruined shirt. He reached for her arm. "Let me." She stiffened to the touch, instinct flashing in her eyes, but she didn't pull away. Slowly, carefully, Daniel tightened the bandage around her wound, his hand steady despite his own pain. He worked in silence, focused, deliberate. When he finished, he met her gaze. Their faces were close, close enough to feel each other's breath. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Erin was the first to look away, her voice low. "You risk yourself too much for me." Daniel leaned back, exhaustion settling deep in his bones. "Yeah, well, guess I've got a bad habit of protecting people who don't think they need it." Her silver eyes flicked back to him, sharper now. "And if I told you that protecting me could cost you your life?" He smirked, tired but unyielding. Then I'd tell you it's a price I already decided was worth it. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Thick, heavy, charged. Then Erin let out a slow breath, her shoulders lowering. She closed her eyes briefly, as if allowing herself a sliver of peace for the first time since crashing on this world. Outside, the helicopters had faded. The soldiers who pursued them lay broken. But Daniel knew the quiet wouldn't last. Reinforcements would come. The desert would not keep their secret forever. Still, for now, there's only the two of them, scarred, battered, but alive. Daniel leaned his head back against the stone and whispered, almost to himself, "We'll find a way." Erin opened her eyes again, silver reflecting the dim light. She studied him, her expression unreadable, but her voice was soft when she answered. "Perhaps together." The words settled between them, like a fragile promise. In the rubble of war, in the stillness after the storm, something had begun to grow. Not trust, not yet love, but the first flicker of both. The desert night was mercilessly quiet. Daniel and Erin had left the ruined cavern behind hours ago, moving slowly through the canyon until the moon rose high above them. They had found a place to rest beneath a crumbling overhang, the sand cool against their backs, the stars sharp and endless above. Neither spoke for a long time. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, filled with everything they had endured, everything still unspoken. Daniel lay staring at the sky, his arms still aching but steadied by the alien medicine coursing through him. Every muscle in his body screamed for sleep, but his mind wouldn't rest. He kept seeing the battle, the flash of gunfire, the explosion, Erin's blade slicing arcs of light. He kept seeing her bleeding, swaying, almost falling, and the thought that chilled him most, how close he had come to losing her. Finally, he broke the silence. You fought like you didn't care if you lived or died. Beside him, Erin shifted slightly, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight. I have always fought that way. Daniel turned his head toward her. That's not a way to live. She tilted her head, studying him. On my world, life was not given freely. We were raised to fight, to kill, to endure. To hesitate was to die. Her voice carried no self-pity, no sorrow, just fact. But it struck him like a blade. And yet, he said quietly, you hesitated today. You didn't fight alone. You let me stand with you. Her eyes softened, the faintest crack in the armor she wore so fiercely. You forced me to. Daniel smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his tired eyes. Yeah, I'm good at that. For a moment, she almost smiled back. But instead, she looked away, her gaze tracing the endless stretch of stars. I should not be here, she murmured. I should not even be alive. My people, my war, it is gone. And I remain. Daniel swallowed hard, recognizing the weight in her voice. Survivor's guilt. He knew it well. I know what it's like, he said softly. To come back from war when others don't. To ask why you survived and they didn't. She looked back at him, startled. You? He nodded, eyes distant. Afghanistan. Iraq. Pick a desert, I was there. Men better than me didn't come home. And I did. Never figured out why. A long silence stretched between them. The desert wind whispered across the sand. Finally, Erin's voice broke it, quiet but steady. And how did you live with it? Daniel thought for a long moment. By deciding to make it mean something. If I survived, it had to count, even if I didn't know how. Erin's gaze lingered on him, unreadable. Then, slowly, she whispered, perhaps that is why I am here. To make it mean something. The words hung in the air, fragile, tentative. Daniel turned fully toward her now, his voice firm. Then we'll figure it out. Together. Her silver eyes locked on his, searching, measuring. And in that moment, under the cold desert stars, something shifted again, deeper, stronger. Not just survival, not just necessity, a choice. She didn't smile, but her voice was softer when she spoke. You are stubborn, Daniel. He chuckled weakly. Yeah, people tell me that a lot. Silence settled again, but this time it was different. Not heavy, not sharp. Something calmer, almost peaceful. The night stretched on, and for the first time since their paths had crossed, neither felt truly alone. Daniel's eyes drifted closed, exhaustion finally overtaking him. As he slipped towards sleep, the last thing he saw was Erin, still awake, still watching the stars. but her blade lay at her side, unlit. For the first time, she allowed herself to rest without fear. The sun rose over the Mojave Desert, painting the dunes in shades of fire and gold. Daniel stood at the crest of a ridge, his boots sinking into the sand, the cool morning air filling his lungs. His wounds had begun to heal, still tender, still aching, but no longer raw. The alien medicine had done its work, though the scars would remain. He didn't mind. Scars were proof of survival, proof that he'd chosen to fight and to live. Behind him, Erin emerged from the shadow of the rocks. Her armor was battered, her blade sheathed, her golden hair catching the first rays of dawn. The desert wind tugged at the loose strands, framing her blue skin with light. For a long moment, Daniel simply looked at her. Not at the warrior who had cut through soldiers like a storm, not at the alien who had declared herself unbeatable, but at the woman who had chosen not to fight alone. "Beautiful morning," he said quietly. Erin's silver eyes swept across the horizon, then back to him. "It feels different." He smiled faintly. "Different good or different bad?" She considered the question, then answered in a voice softer than he'd ever heard from her. "Different hopeful." The word lingered between them, fragile, unexpected. Hope wasn't something either of them had carried for a long time. Daniel nodded, stepping closer. "So what now? The world isn't going to just ignore this. Soldiers will be back, maybe worse than before." Her gaze hardened, but not with the same coldness he'd seen when they first met. "This was resolve. Then we prepare. Together." Daniel chuckled under his breath. "Guess I don't get much choice in that, huh?" Erin tilted her head, almost teasing. "You chose the moment you stood in front of me." He couldn't argue with that. And truthfully, he didn't want to. They stood side by side, watching the sun climb higher, casting long shadows across the sand. The war wasn't over. Their fight for survival, for meaning, for each other, was only beginning. But in that moment, for the first time, Daniel believed they might actually win. Not because of his strength, not because of hers, but because, against every odd, they were no longer alone. Erin turned her face toward him, her silver eyes sharp, searching, yet carrying something warmer now. A question unspoken. Daniel met her gaze, steady. "Whatever comes, we face it together." For a heartbeat, she simply studied him. Then, finally she nodded. "Yes," she said, "together." If you've ever rooted for an impossible love, if you've ever believed that strength comes not from being invincible, but from choosing to stand beside someone no matter the cost, this is just one of many stories waiting for you. Subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us for more journeys like this, where humanity, against all odds, proves it was always stronger than anyone believed.